وسع ربي كل شيء علما أفلا تتذكرون.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to your third lesson in this pathway, التفسير وعلوم القرآن. Previously, you've learned in your first lesson تعريف علوم القرآن, the definition of علوم القرآن. In the second lesson, you learned نشأة علوم القرآن, the beginning of علوم القرآن and how it developed. In this lesson, you're going to learn الفرق بين علوم القرآن وأصول التفسير, the difference between علوم القرآن and أصول التفسير. I'm now going to hand you over to your teacher, Ustad Abdul Rahman Hassan, حفظه الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Inshallah ta'ala, in this class I want to go through the difference between علوم القرآن and أصول التفسير. And the reason why this is important is because there is a lot of khalt, which is confusion, which occurs to many people, or a lot of people fall into between those two terms, علوم القرآن and أصول التفسير.
Okay.
And inshallah ta'ala, I just want to clarify that for the students. I want to say, يا طلاب العلم, or students of knowledge, the term علوم القرآن is very, very general. Okay? And under it falls many different sciences.
Okay.
The علوم القرآن can be categorized into three categories. علوم القرآن. The first category is ما يتعلق بلفظه. And when we say ما يتعلق بلفظه, we mean that which goes back to its pronunciation, how it's pronounced, the utterance and the articulation of the Qur'an. So the first علوم القرآن is that which goes back to the pronunciation. And in there is القراءات and التجويد. Those two sciences, they go back to the pronunciation. The second type, or the second category of علوم القرآن is ما يتعلق بمعناه, that which goes back to its meaning. And there are two sciences that go back to the meaning, and that is the tafsir of the Qur'an, and the second, which is ilm known as al-waqf wal-ibtida. Tafsir is the meaning. I know a lot of the students already know that. Al-waqf wal-ibtida is the places you stop in the Qur'an. And a person can't stop and start or pause at one point and then carry on unless they know the meaning. Because if you stop at the wrong place and you don't know what the meaning is, you come out with maybe sometimes a bad meaning that comes out of it. There's a waqf which is fahish, very bad. You've just changed the meaning in its totality just by stopping there and carrying on. So the person has to have some knowledge of the meaning of the Qur'an. So that's why al-waqf wal-ibtida is connected to the meaning of the Qur'an.
Yeah.
The third category is ما يتعلق بشكله, that which goes back to the structure and the writing of the Qur'an. And two sciences fall under there. Number one is what the scholars call علم رسم المصحف, which is the way that the Mus'haf al-Uthmani is written. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be studying the Kitab Aqilatu Atrab al-Qasa'id, and inshallah ta'ala there. And then there is ilmu Abdil Ay, which is basically the numbering of the Qur'an. The verses. Each Surah Al-Fatiha has 7 verses. The scholars have disagreed. Is Fatiha verse of Surah, is the Basmala an ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, or is it not? There is a dispute. So this goes back to the writing of the Mus'haf and how it's written. That's also a science. But it falls under ما يتعلق بشكله, that which goes back to the writing. So علوم القرآن, they go back to these three main points. And then from there, يتفرع, many things fall under it. There is now a science which scholars use interchangeably.
Okay.
And some scholars and muhaqqiqeen, they say they're two different sciences. And that is علوم القرآن and أصول التفسير. Some scholars, they use علوم القرآن and أصول التفسير interchangeably. They consider them both to be the same. So when we said that the علوم القرآن is categorized into three, they would say also أصول التفسير is also categorized into three. And from the scholars that see it that way is the great scholar Ahmed ibn Abd al-Rahim al-Dihlawi, the Indian scholar from the subcontinent. He has a kitab called الفوز الكبير في أصول التفسير. It says أصول التفسير بس علوم القرآن. You have the great Imam of our time who passed away a few years back, العلامة محمد بن صالح العثيمين رحمه الله. He has written a kitab called أصول في التفسير. And then when you look at the book and the content and you look at it brings and it mentions a lot of issues related to علوم القرآن. So as علوم القرآن has many synonymous terms, they say that from it is أصول التفسير, some scholars. Like علوم القرآن, علم التنزيل, علوم التنزيل, علم الكتاب, علوم الكتاب, all of that they said it's all the same. And أصول التفسير is one of those. Some scholars, they said no, there are differences between the two. And they said that أصول التفسير is in تفسير.
أصول التفسير is in tafsir.
It's in tafsir. So it goes back to a subcategory of علوم القرآن.
ما يتعلق بمعنى.
Exactly. So if we say علوم القرآن, in it is tafsir. And in tafsir is what? أصول التفسير.
Okay.
And that is the view that a lot of the muhaqqiqeen mention. So here you have علوم القرآن, and in there is علم التفسير, and in علم التفسير is أصول التفسير. Because if you look at the early scholars, they got the أصول التفسير, the قواعد التفسير, which is also known as, it's known as أصول التفسير, it's also known as قواعد التفسير. They got it from the tafsir of the Qur'an. Principles which they got from the tafsir of the Qur'an. So it's connected specifically to the tafsir of the Qur'an. It doesn't extend to other things of the Qur'an. So for example, the issue related to al-Makki wal-Madani would be studied in usul al-tafsir as it would be studied in what? Ulum al-Qur'an. The reason is because the Makki and the Madani has an effect on the interpretation of the Qur'an. It has an effect on the tafsir al-Qur'an.
Yeah.
And the meaning that is extracted from it. So here you see some points, some knowledge or some headings or some points that will be found in usul al-tafsir that will also be found, of course, in the ulum al-Qur'an.
Yeah.
Why would it not be the case? Because if it's ulum al-Qur'an, in it is usul ilm tafsir, and then in there is usul al-tafsir, anything that is usul al-tafsir by default is going to be what? It's going to be ulum al-Qur'an.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
So then would it be correct to say that there are other things that are inside Ulum al-Qur'an that are not inside Usul al-Tafsir? For example, Ilm Rasm al-Mushaf. That
wouldn't be Usul al-Tafsir.
But it would be in Ulum al-Quran.
It would be in Ulum al-Quran. So if you find somebody mentioning, for example, Ilm Addil Ayi in Usul al-Tafsir, and the book is called Usul al-Tafsir, then you know now this book is not Usul al-Tafsir. It's talking about mabahith, issues that are not part of Usul al-Tafsir, because they don't have علم عد الآي has nothing to do with the tafsir of the Qur'an. It hasn't got nothing to do with it. أما ضبط المصحف, أما رسم المصحف. It has nothing to do with the tajweed. It doesn't have anything to do with tafsir or usul tafsir. So if those mabahith are brought here, then you know by default this book has now moved from being usul tafsir and is now extended itself to being from Ulum al-Quran.
Yeah.
I want to give you some examples so the students can understand. For example, in the ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ. وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ. This is a khabar. Allah is telling us the poets. Allah is talking about the poets. The people who follow them are the ghawoon, the astray people. Okay? Now this is a khabar, meaning it's a statement. Okay? It's not a request. It's, you're being told something. It's information. It's a news. Scholars, they mention that the khabar la yunsakh. A khabar cannot be abrogated. It's like me saying to you, I drove here. And then a few hours later, I say, no, I walked here. So I either drove here or I walked here. One cannot abrogate the other. But if I say to you, every Monday, please can you bring me, pick up coffee from me on the way. And then a few days later, I say, you know what? I lift that ruling or that request, I take it back.
Yeah.
So a request, a command and a prohibition can be abrogated. But a statement cannot be abrogated because it would be a lie.
Yeah.
Now, this has an effect on the tafsir of the Qur'an. If this ayah can be, because if the ayah is abrogated, we no longer take the meaning out of it. So you find al-nasikh wal-mansukh being taught in usul al-tafsir, and it also of course be taught in ulum al-Qur'an. By extension, of course, ulum al-Qur'an is usul al-tafsir falls under it.
Yeah.
So the reason we specified a whole class for this is because some of the students will see a madkhal in ulum al-Qur'an and then another madkhal in usul al-tafsir.
Yeah.
So for them to understand that they don't confuse one with the other, don't think that they are synonymous, as some people make it look like. But then again, of course, there are terms in our religion which is called إِذَا اجْتَمَعَا افترقا وَإِذَا افترقا اجْتَمَعَا. If these terms come together in the same context, they take two different meanings. If they're mentioned in the same context, they take two different meanings. And if they're mentioned in two different places, they are synonymous. There are terms like that, al-Iman and al-Islam. For example, al-Faqir and al-Miskeen. Terms like that in our religion. And usul al-Tafsir and ulum al-Qur'an have become like that through the history of Islam. So that's what I wanted to go through, inshallah ta'ala, in this class, inshallah ta'ala. In our next lesson, we will be starting Nuzul al-Qur'an, the Qur'an coming down and the compilation of the Qur'an. And then we'll be speaking about the revelation. We will be talking about how the Qur'an came down. We will be discussing what is known as al-Makki and al-Madani. We will also be talking about Asbab al-Nuzul and Jam' al-Qur'an, and all of this, inshallah ta'ala, will each be a class. And my aim, inshallah ta'ala, is to really simplify as much as I can the madkhal. So that the student, when he watches it and he listens to the introduction, he has a good understanding. He can take all these notes. Sometimes there's going to be a lot of information, but a lot of information doesn't mean that it's hard. You write down that information on a paper, inshallah ta'ala, you go over it a few times, and these books will be repetition for you, inshallah ta'ala.
Of course, the student can watch the videos many times.
Many times can watch it, inshallah ta'ala. If I've said anything wrong or incorrect, it's from me, and shaitan and Allah and His Messenger are both free from it. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.